Talk about the president's executive action on immigration on Friday. A lot of Republicans on Capitol Hill were critical, some of the policy, but more so, I think, about the implementation and the lack of coordination in their view with agencies, with Congress. Is that something that the Trump administration thinks is criticism that would be constructive and you will take to heart and maybe be different in the future?
No, because it's not reflecting the truth. I spoke at length yesterday to General Kelly, the new director for Homeland Security, who just wouldn't stop laughing because he said the reports he reads in the newspaper bear no reality or connection to what's happening. He said the idea that we're not being consulted is just absurd, that principles are being shut out of an important executive order like this one. So as somebody who's inside, I was inside the transition working for General Flynn. I'm now in the White House working for the Strategic Initiatives Group. I have to just laugh when I read something in the newspaper about a decision where I was in the room the day before and it bears no relation to reality.
Okay, but members of Congress, Republican leaders, they say that they didn't know this was coming and they were surprised. Obviously, there was a lot of confusion at airports. People on the front lines, at least in that first couple days, didn't know exactly what was going on. No,
General Kelly would say no, and that's what he told me yesterday. There was no confusion. We actually implemented this order with 109 people who were slightly delayed for secondary screening. That's incredible efficiency out of 325,000 people in one 24-hour period. That's how smoothly it was executed.
Top Republicans, including Senators Graham and McCain, say that the ban is a propaganda tool for ISIS and similar groups and could put U.S. troops at risk who are fighting alongside Iraqi troops against ISIS right now. What do you say to that?
I would say that any document signed or executed in the United States makes no difference to ISIS. ISIS believes you are an infidel, Jake, and you should be beheaded or convert to Islam. Whether or not a president signs something or not is utterly irrelevant to that attitude. The idea that what we do here, that they're suddenly going to surrender or give up or recruit, is absurd. They wish to have a global caliphate, Jake. That's all that they wish to do.
I take your point on the leadership of ISIS, but McCain and Graham are talking about it being a recruiting tool, that people who wouldn't necessarily join a group like ISIS or Al-Qaeda are, when they hear that the United States is banning people from 7 majority Muslim countries, at least temporarily, they think, Syria, who knows how long that's going to be, they think, well, this really is a showdown between the West and Islam. And I'm not talking about al-Baghdadi. Obviously, he has his opinions and his vile thoughts. I'm talking about the people that they might be able to recruit.
I think the people who propagate that version of events need to get out of what did Ben Rhodes call it, the echo chamber, this bubble that the media has created for itself on the left and on the right coast. It's not the reality. I spoke to an Iraqi today who told me his friends in Iraq, who are now delayed for a certain amount of time, said, this is excellent. This means the president understands how many bad guys want to come to America. We wish to be processed as former interpreters, as people who worked for the American forces in theater. We want to be recognized for what we did and to have the bad guys excluded. This is what Iraqis are saying right now who wish to come to America. Let's listen to them and not the chattering classes in LA, New York, or DC.
Well, we've heard from a lot of refugees and people who had visas and people who had green cards, and I'm sure you've seen the reports of people who were negatively affected by the executive order on Friday. I'm sure that there are some, we talked to one yesterday, an Iraqi who's now in this country who said exactly what you said, but there are also a lot of people who say, I've gone through 2 years of vetting and then all of a sudden I can't come, or I'm a refugee, what am I going to do? Some people who have sold all their belongings. Certainly there's another side to this.
Look, I am an immigrant, Jake. I chose this nation. I'm a proud American. My parents were refugees.
From Hungary?
Yeah, who escaped a dictatorship. What happened to them? My parents were vetted for weeks in a refugee camp. Not for 60 seconds by some INS agent or a member of the State Department online. For weeks to determine that they truly were persecuted and escaping that dictatorship and didn't pose a threat to the UK. That's extreme vetting. That's taking national security seriously. This is simply about protecting Americans. Nothing to do with religion and nothing to do with xenophobia. It's about national security.
The refugee program, the vetting is 18 months to 2 years.
The length of it, maybe. That's paperwork. That's process. I'm talking about
the
serious
program.
counterintelligence questioning, making sure somebody's story is accurate. The absurdity under the Obama administration that you're not allowed to check somebody's public Facebook postings because that's against their privacy. Hang on, American citizens don't have their Facebook posts protected from anybody else reading them. The system is broken, Jake. It's broken. It has to be fixed. We don't want to see a Berlin here. We don't want to see people mowed down as they were in Nice happening again in America.
We certainly don't, but there is not any example of a refugee successfully carrying out a terrorist attack in this country. And as you know, the individuals from foreign countries, from majority Muslim countries, who have carried out successful attacks in this country are largely from countries that are not on this ban.
I'm really glad you asked this question. This is incredibly important. Those 7 nations, which were identified by the last administration.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so it's Obama's. This is
not for banning, but for thorough
concern,
vetting.
for
Yes,
concern.
absolutely.
Okay, those are the nations. Why are they? Why is it that list of 7 nations? Because that's where ISIS is, and that's where Al Qaeda is. Okay, Somalia, Yemen, and that's also Iran, a state sponsor. Okay, so these are the nations where we have to now engage our allies, our partners. We have to take down ISIS. What do you think is going to happen when we squeeze that balloon, Jake? Where do you think they're going to go? I talk to our European counterparts. They are petrified that if we win in Mosul, what's going to happen? We're not going to kill or capture all the terrorists. What are they going to do? A phrase that was used with me today by one of our allies, there's going to be a starburst. They're going to go west. They're going to go north. We don't want the Berlins to happen here. We don't want the Paris attacks to happen here. That's why we're taking action now, and that's why the President's executive order is so very, very timely.
But, of course, we do not want those attacks.
So we're being preventative.
But should there not be, I mean, it seems the criticism that you're getting is this is a blanket ban, or temporary ban, on tens, hundreds of thousands of people, most of them who wish no harm on the United States. Some of them, you've seen the stories in the newspaper, a little boy who needs cancer treatments, that sort of thing. That has the effect of, in the view of many national security experts, I'm not talking about the media now, talking about the national security experts, of this actually makes us less safe, even though the attempt is clearly to make us more safe.
Do you have a family?
I do.
Okay.
I have 2 beautiful children and a wonderful wife.
That's great. Would you be prepared to take the chance that out of these thousands of people, that we're just going to keep things as they are, and one bad guy gets in and attacks your family, God forbid? Are you prepared to take that chance? Because that's the calculation the president is making. And it's his prerogative. The law laid down in the 1950s states it is the commander-in-chief's prerogative to set the standards for immigration. He understands it is his burden to make sure your children are safe. I think you would